Every morning at exactly 6 o'clock, an 88-year-old woman in Okinawa prepares the same breakfast she has eaten for most of her life. A bowl of miso soup, a small serving of purple sweet potato, green tea, nothing more. She has never counted calories, never tracked carbohydrates, never worried about hitting a protein target. And yet she weighs almost exactly what she weighed at 50. Her cholesterol remains remarkably low. She walks to the local market every morning. She tends a small garden, and she still lives independently. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, millions of women are fighting a battle they never expected. It often begins quietly. A few extra pounds around the waist, energy that doesn't feel the same anymore. Sleep becomes lighter. Hot flashes appear. The same meals that worked at 40 suddenly stop working at 55. Doctors call it menopause. Most women simply call it frustrating. But what if the problem isn't your metabolism? What if the problem is that you've been following advice that was never designed for this stage of life? Because when researchers began studying the women of Okinawa, they discovered something surprising. These women were doing almost everything differently. They ate more carbohydrates, less protein, rarely counted calories, and somehow remained lean, healthy, and free from many of the conditions that become common after menopause. Today, we're going to explore why. Not through a modern diet plan, not through a supplement, but through a way of living that has quietly survived for generations. And by the end of this journey, you may begin to understand why so many Okinawan women age differently from the rest of the world. To understand Okinawa, we first need to understand menopause. For most of a woman's life, estrogen quietly performs hundreds of important functions. It helps regulate body fat, supports cardiovascular health, protects bones, influences insulin sensitivity, and even affects mood and sleep. Then menopause arrives. Estrogen declines, and suddenly many women notice changes that seem to happen almost overnight. Weight accumulates around the abdomen, blood sugar becomes harder to control, cholesterol rises, hot flashes interrupt sleep, and energy drops. The body begins behaving differently. The standard response in much of the West is simple: eat more protein, cut carbohydrates, track calories, fight harder. But Okinawa offers a very different perspective. Because traditional Okinawan women were never taught to fight their bodies. They learned how to work with them. The first surprise is carbohydrates. For years, carbohydrates have been blamed for weight gain, especially after 50. Yet, traditional Okinawan women built their diet around a carbohydrate, a purple sweet potato called beni imo. For decades, this humble food provided the majority of calories in the traditional Okinawan diet. Not meat, not fish, not protein shakes, sweet potatoes. At first glance, this seems impossible. How could women remain slim while eating so many carbohydrates? The answer lies in the kind of carbohydrate they chose. Unlike processed foods, purple sweet potatoes digest slowly. They provide fiber. They release energy gradually. They help stabilize blood sugar. And perhaps most importantly, they keep hunger under control. This matters enormously after menopause, because one of the hidden drivers of weight gain is insulin resistance. When insulin becomes less effective, the body stores more energy as fat. Hunger increases. Cravings intensify, and losing weight becomes much more difficult. The Okinawan diet appears to interrupt this cycle, not through restriction, but through food choices that keep blood sugar stable throughout the day. Imagine 2 lunches. One woman eats processed bread, sugary snacks, and highly refined foods. Her blood sugar rises quickly, then falls. A few hours later, she is hungry again. Another woman eats sweet potato, vegetables, and tofu. Her energy remains steady. Her hunger stays quiet. The difference seems small, but repeated every day for 30 years, small differences become dramatic outcomes. The second surprise may be even more controversial. Protein. Modern menopause advice often focuses on increasing protein intake. More chicken, more dairy, more protein powder, more shakes, more bars, more everything. Yet, traditional Okinawan women consumed far less protein than most modern experts recommend. This doesn't mean protein is unimportant. Protein remains essential. The real question is where it comes from. In Okinawa, much of it came from tofu, miso, and other soy-based foods. Not enormous portions of meat, not protein supplements, just simple foods eaten consistently. And this is where things become interesting. Soy contains compounds called isoflavones. These plant compounds interact with estrogen receptors in the body. They don't replace estrogen, but they may provide a gentle support system during the years after menopause. Researchers have long been fascinated by this relationship, because populations that consume soy regularly often experience lower rates of certain menopausal symptoms. Traditional Okinawan women were not eating tofu because it was trendy. They ate it because it had always been part of the culture. Sometimes the most powerful habits are the ones that never needed marketing. Then there is miso soup. The same breakfast our 88-year-old woman still prepares every morning. Warm, simple, familiar. A bowl of miso soup may not seem important, but in Okinawa, it serves several purposes at once. It provides fermented foods, supports digestion, delivers nutrients, and perhaps most importantly, it slows the pace of eating. Modern meals often happen in a rush. Standing, driving, scrolling, distracted. But Okinawan meals encourage something different. Presence. The soup arrives first. The body relaxes. The meal begins slowly. And that small change influences everything that follows. Because people who eat slowly tend to eat less. People who pay attention notice fullness sooner. And people who notice fullness sooner rarely need calorie-counting apps. There is another ritual that appears again and again in Okinawa, a phrase spoken before meals. Hara Hachi Bu. Eat until you are 80% full, then stop. At first, it sounds almost too simple, but simplicity is often deceptive. Most people stop eating when they are full. Okinawan women stop slightly before that point. Not hungry, not stuffed, satisfied. The difference may only be a few bites. Yet, over decades, those few bites create a meaningful difference. Researchers studying Okinawan centenarians repeatedly identified mild caloric restriction as one of the factors associated with longevity and metabolic health. But what makes Hara Hachi Bu so powerful is not restriction. It is awareness. No forbidden foods, no complicated rules, no guilt. Just a quiet question. Am I still hungry? In a culture obsessed with more, Okinawa mastered enough. And perhaps this is where menopause becomes easier. Because many women are taught to respond to weight gain with stricter rules, more discipline, more tracking, more restriction. But restriction often creates resistance. The harder we fight our bodies, the louder they seem to fight back. Okinawan women rarely approach food this way. Instead, they rely on habits that naturally regulate intake. Smaller bowls, slower meals, more vegetables, more fiber, less processed food, and Hara Hachi Bu. The result is not deprivation. The result is balance. But food alone does not explain Okinawa. There is another factor that modern health conversations often ignore. Stress. or more specifically, the absence of constant stress. Walk through an Okinawan village and you will notice something. People talk, neighbors visit, gardens are tended, meals are shared. Community remains strong. This matters more than most people realize, because chronic stress influences nearly every symptom associated with menopause: sleep, weight gain, inflammation, hormonal regulation, cardiovascular health. All of it is affected by stress, and while Okinawa is not stress-free, traditional Okinawan life often includes protective social structures that many modern societies have lost. No supplement can replace meaningful human connection. There is a Japanese concept called ikigai, a reason to wake up in the morning. Many Okinawan women continue contributing long after retirement age. They garden, cook, care for grandchildren, participate in community life. They remain useful, and usefulness creates purpose. Purpose creates engagement, and engagement creates vitality. This may be one of the least discussed aspects of healthy aging. A person who feels needed often takes better care of themselves. A person who feels connected moves more naturally. A person who still has a reason to get out of bed often remains healthier than someone who has quietly withdrawn from life. Which brings us back to the woman we met at the beginning. Tomorrow morning, she will wake before sunrise. She will prepare another bowl of miso soup. She will eat sweet potato. She will drink tea. She will stop before she is completely full. Not because she read a diet book, not because she downloaded an app, not because she fears aging. She simply continues traditions that have guided her for decades. And perhaps that is the real lesson. The women of Okinawa are not constantly trying to lose weight. They are not fighting menopause. They are not declaring war on their bodies. They are living in a way that supports the body through each season of life, including this one. In much of the West, menopause is often treated as the beginning of decline. In Okinawa, it is simply another chapter, a different season. One that requires adjustment, but not panic. Wisdom, but not fear. We often search for dramatic solutions, the perfect supplement, the perfect hormone strategy, the perfect diet. But Okinawan women offer something different. A bowl of soup, a sweet potato, a little tofu, a slower meal, a smaller portion, a meaningful life. Nothing extraordinary. Yet somehow, when combined and repeated for decades, these ordinary habits become extraordinary results. Thank you for walking with me today. Until next time, I'm Akiyomori. And remember, sometimes the body needs less fixing than we think. Sometimes it simply needs a wiser way of living.